Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Career Insights, survey results and advice from both industry and academia for young professionals. This is a webinar sponsored by the American Floral Endowment's Young Professionals Council. My name is Megan Bowman, and I'm Director of Research Operations at Ball Helix Central Research and Development Team at Ball Horticultural Company. I also sit on the Board of Trustees for the American Floral Endowment and serve as the liaison to the Young Professionals Council, or YPC. Established in 2015, the YPC offers leadership, professional development, and networking opportunities to young floral industry professionals. YPC members participate in online and in-person meetings, webinars like this one, and other networking opportunities to share ideas, collaborate with influential industry members, and help promote careers in the floral industry to support AFE's mission. We encourage you to take a look and join us at endowment.org/YPC, where you can find additional resources and request to join the YPC. Membership is totally free, and you'll see information provided in the chat if you'd like to learn more. This presentation and interactive discussion is being recorded and will be available on the endowment site and YouTube. We encourage you to submit your questions through the Q&A feature in our chat. We'll answer as many of your questions as we can live before the end of the hour. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our two other speakers. Kimberly Williams is a professor in greenhouse management and University Distinguished Teaching Scholar at Kansas State University. She teaches 5 horticulture courses, including greenhouse management, herbaceous crop production, and interior landscaping. Kim's research focuses on applied projects in greenhouse crop production and scholarship of teaching and learning in horticulture. She's been on the faculty at K-State since 1997. Michael Woodjasinga is an assistant grower for Bell Nursery in Springfield, Ohio, where he helps manage the production of nearly 20 acres of young plants, annuals, perennials, bulbs, and pot plants. He previously worked in growing positions at Bell's Nursery's Virginia and Maryland locations, where he's been instrumental in trialing hundreds of new varieties of annuals and perennials and developing IPM and cultural practices for 5 acres of a hemp pilot project. Michael is a member of our Young Professionals Council. He graduated in 2019 from the University of Maryland with a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture Science and Technology, with a concentration in environmental horticulture and a minor in sustainability studies. Michael has helped with the data analysis in our 2 informal surveys and will now present to you the results. Thank you and welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Appreciate the introduction. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it. So just want to make sure we got the presentation up. So we're going to go ahead and start with the industry survey. We went ahead and we surveyed 104 respondents. Let's see, I'm just seeing the title slide right now. Do you guys have want to go to the next slide? Perfect. All right, and we could go ahead and go to our next slide where we'll look at some of the details of the 104 respondents we got for the industry survey. So of those, we found that 2/3 were either retailers, floral designers, or event planners. About 15% of them were production growers and breeders, and the remaining were in positions in wholesaling, manufacturing, education, and consulting. So a majority of them have worked for a company that has less than 50 employees. We see most on the bar graph here are only working with companies with about 10 members or less. But if we look at the bottom part, we see that 20% work for larger companies ranging from 50 all the way up to 500 plus. So of our respondents, a lot of them have had horticultural or floriculture experience in their background. And nearly 75% of them have held their current roles for more than 16 years. We saw that annual salaries reported by our respondents were all across the board, with the lower half earning anywhere between 20 to 60,000, and the upper half earning between 61 all the way up to 120,000 plus, with the top 20% making that over 120,000. We took a look at these numbers a little more and researched some job forums to kind of get a better idea where these different salaries might fit, and we found that the lower range was with a lot of entry-level positions, either as floral designers, greenhouse laborers, lab technicians, and a lot of those were in that $30,000 to $50,000 range. With higher levels of salaries ranging from 80 to 120,000. Those were mostly for senior positions, lead florists, lead designers, head growers, breeders, and other higher positions. We'll get into it a little bit later in the presentation, but we'll share some advice from some of our respondents on how to excel in the industry and open up opportunities for higher level roles. And so we also saw that the highest level of education was pretty widespread across our respondents. Of them, around 50% earned degrees, either associate's degrees or bachelor's degrees, but 25% just have a high school diploma. Of the 50% that do have, or I'm sorry, of the respondents who did pursue higher education, around 50% of them pursued degrees in horticulture, and the rest mostly focused on business or marketing degrees. It was pretty interesting to see that a good mix had both business and horticultural degrees, or minors or studies or some sort of concentration involving the two of them. The remaining 20% of our respondents had liberal arts degrees in subjects such as art, political science, and English. And so we saw that a lot of our respondents could have benefited from a business degree. We see that nearly half are either business owners or business executives. And then the remaining respondents, a large number, are either floral designers or event managers. And we're also seeing some representation from people in sales and marketing, research and development, and production. So when it came to first finding their current positions, 25% stated that they started or purchased their own business, 35% entered a family-owned business, and the others relied on applying to open positions and networking opportunities. There's also several respondents that mentioned starting in entry-level positions and then gaining the experience through on-the-job training and hard work to get up to the high-level roles and eventually be promoted up to the spots they're in today. So fortunately for young people like us, we see that 2/3 of our respondents expect to hire within the next 12 to 18 months, with most of them looking to fill anywhere from 1 to 10 positions. One of the things that was interesting was there's a wide variety of answers in where these companies are posting their job listings. So around 50% mentioned that they are posting on company websites and Indeed, but there's a large representation of respondents posting on other areas like LinkedIn and social media, and even some referring just to word of mouth, local media, and physical signage at their stores. And so when it came to hiring new employees, there was a combination that was really surprisingly equal between both hard and soft skills. A lot of employers mentioned wanting to see experience and education as something for their employees, but they also really wanted to focus on soft skills like a positive attitude, high enthusiasm, and a passionate personality. They're really looking for people with a strong willingness to learn and that are really a good cultural fit with their team and able to work collaboratively with others. And so some advice that our respondents had for young professionals entering the industry mostly focused on how diverse the day-to-day operations might be, and being prepared to take on any sort of role, not just because it'll enhance your learning opportunity there, but then you might also figure out you might be interested in a different specialty within the company you're with. Having an outgoing personality and a penchant for learning, self-improvement, these are all things that our respondents were all really looking for in new employees. And this was one quote that we pulled out, was that horticulture can be very demanding, but it's a rewarding field. And while it may not be for everyone, it provides a great sense of accomplishment. So here's some more quotes that we pulled out from our survey. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but one of the biggest things kind of going along the theme that we've been talking about is the diversity of the opportunity. You're not just going to be digging in the dirt all day long, as one respondent put it. There's a lot of different fields that you could go into within the industry, from technology to marketing to research. And then also looking at cultural fit. Just because your employer is looking for you to fit with you, you want to make sure that you fit with your employer. So making sure that the company's goals and mission aligns with yours. And then just being willing to go out of your comfort zone, try something new, do something different, and continue to expand your skill set. And then some advice for must-have traits, skills, and experience that applicants might want to make sure is on their job application. One of the first things that stuck out to me was correct spelling, making sure that you're really just paying attention to detail in your application. But then besides that, just touching back on the balance between hard and soft skills. Throughout both our industry and our academic survey, this is something that was really heavily noted. So not just having the education and experience, but also being willing to learn and collaborate. Some of our respondents noted that internships in and out of college, volunteer work, part-time jobs, full-time summer jobs are all good opportunities to get the experience that might make you stand out a little more on a job application. And then the last thing, we have a little word cloud from some of the must-haves. And so you can kind of see the ones that stick out. You have industry knowledge, creative, personable, sales experience, team player, just going back to that balance between hard and soft skills. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and look at our academic survey. For this, we had 22 respondents, and as Dr. Williams mentioned, this was pretty good, really good considering the size of the horticulture academic industry. Not a lot of research relative to other industries. So we're going to go ahead and just dig into the 22 responses we have from our academic survey. And so we found that a little bit about the schools that our respondents worked at. Almost half of them have more than 20 faculty members, and around 20% have less than 10. Most of the institutions have at least 15,000 undergraduates and offer 4-year degree paths, although some did offer just 2-year degree paths. And so one of the things that we saw was that almost all of them had some sort of teaching position, either professors or assistant professors, and have been there for at least 16 years. A lot of our respondents also made over $100,000 a year. And so this is another number we kind of dug back into to see if this was on par with what the industry standard is. And we were seeing that a lot of entry-level positions are looking at anywhere from 70 to 90,000 as faculty members. And then after that, the salary has increased over 6 figures. And so we found that there was a strong diversity of roles among our respondents. One of the things we looked at was how much time they actually spend with the floriculture crop. So you see it's basically split up between quarters. Some spend as little as 0% of their time, all the way up to 100% of their time with floriculture crop. And another thing that was also interesting was the ratio of teaching to research. A lot of the respondents mentioned that they might only do research and they might only teach. And then there was a nice balance of ones that did both. And so here's another thing we looked at was if they were looking for to hire. And we found that about a third definitely think they will be hiring in the next 1 to 3 years. A third were uncertain, and a third don't think so. And the majority of our responses noted that they receive anywhere from 0 to 50 applications for these positions. So unlike our industry survey, where a lot of things were posted on Indeed or social media sites or LinkedIn, we found that professional networks were a lot more common. And so 60% mentioned that they posted positions on the American Society for Horticultural Sciences. And 85% reported that they post them right on their school career pages. And so when it came to obtaining their current position, 75% mentioned that they found it through graduate school work or networking connections. And just as a tip, something that we found a lot of our respondents also mentioned was the importance of maintaining a strong professional network and introducing yourself to potential job opportunities throughout your undergraduate career. So when it came to hiring new employees, same thing I mentioned previously, but people with strong interpersonal skills and the ability to collaborate, but also those hard skills, good writing skills, communication skills, and then we'll dig into some more of the hard skills later that were really mentioned by our respondents. So these are a little bit more of the hard skills: the grant writing, publishing volume, evidence of research output, things that a lot of these institutions are really looking for, where they're not just teaching, but also publishing research and vice versa. They want to have people that are able to work well with students, work well with other farmers or other horticulturalists that might be out in the industry. And then another thing was trying to get like those real teaching experiences to be able to really work with students, with other researchers, and then of course maintaining a breadth of knowledge throughout the industry. And so when we asked them some things that we would like them would suggest when preparing for a job in floriculture, we see a lot of the mix between teaching skills and research skills, but then also the people skills, networking skills, and trying to get to know as many people as you can in the industry, whether they're in the academia side or in the industry side. The wider your network connection can be, the more opportunity that you'll have. And then the last thing is just basically showing, having concrete evidence of these skills that I mentioned previously, being able to provide papers, research information, and of course, just flexibility with everything as well. And then lastly, we have another word cloud. And so you can kind of see, again, just the mix between the hard skills and soft skills, being able to teach and publish, get funding, being the hard skills, and then our soft skills like communication, leadership, and being personable. All right, so that's about all I got. One of the things I'll do before we finish up the review, I just want to let you guys know that there are a lot of opportunities in the horticulture and floriculture space, and I highly recommend you guys check out the AFE Career Center, where you'll find lots of opportunities and different job postings, the opportunity for resume review, and a lot more. So as it was previously mentioned, this is a free resource, and as a young professional, it could be something that could really help you out getting started. And the last thing, if you're not already a YPC member, a member of the Young Professionals Council, I highly recommend you check it out. And I'm sure there's a link in the chat for you to easily take a look at it and sign up. And on that note, we'll go ahead and begin our Q&A. Go ahead and see if we got any questions here in the chat. All right. So I'll go ahead and start off here. For our co-speakers, Dr. Williams and Megan Bowman, I'm going to go ahead and ask if you could share some experience with us about applying to jobs in the floriculture industry and how you got to where you are now.
Okay, so I think, I'm currently serving on a search committee for an assistant professor of turfgrass position here at my institution, which is Kansas State University. And so I'm thinking about how some of those really cool survey results are really meaningful in terms of the questions that are being asked in that search, and how they really do apply to academic positions, which involve teaching, research, and outreach in floriculture. One of the things that I think is worth mentioning that it's not always obvious in academic positions is that internships are really valued when you can show that for applied science like horticulture, you have a real experience and connection in the industry that you are wanting to teach about or do research in. It's really valued in the search process. I thought the survey results about networking were really on mark. Certainly, there are lots of listservs and like academic listservs and so forth where positions are frequently announced. So that piece, to every presentation that you give, if you're looking at an academic position, is going to be an opportunity to network with someone who works in a department that may have a position open in the future, and that becomes a really important connection. So those were just a couple of highlights that I'll throw out there before tossing it to Megan for some ideas.
So, in terms of experience and then applying for, jobs in the industry, a lot of what came out of the survey, of course, resonates with my own experience. I will say that, as a scientist, I'm trained as a plant scientist, kind of universally. So my move into the floral industry was not coming from a background in the floral industry. So I did my PhD in veggie crops. I've worked in row crops, but I had never worked on a flower before. But there's so much that you can translate from that experience to floral industry. And I think we're seeing a lot of that, especially in the R&D, research science side of things. We are seeing people coming from all over sorts of horticulture, agronomists, row crop backgrounds that are interested in tackling a whole new challenge, which, flowers can be for a lot of us who have worked on species that people have been working on for a long time. It's kind of a whole new endeavor. And I think the survey reflects that coming into industry, it really matters about if the culture of the company fits you and if you fit the culture of the company. That seems trivial, but it's so important, especially if you're coming into as like a research team. You have to work very closely together, not just like when you were in academic labs. I think that there are, it shouldn't be taken for granted how important it is that you feel like this is a place where you can form a community and you can be comfortable in your workspace, and that you have colleagues that you can work closely with, and a company, a vision in the company that you align with. I also think that's really important, right? Because, coming to work every day, and working for somewhere that you really feel passionate about. We're all very lucky that we work in we work in flowers, right? Like we work in one of the best parts of agriculture. Of course, we're not at all biased, right? But also just the companies we work for. You have to really, you have the opportunity to vet that in the interview process, and you should, as much as you can. And
awesome.
I think we got a question from Karen.
Yep. Yeah, you want to go ahead and. Well, let's see. So the question. Can you share some
mistakes? Can you share some mistakes you've seen young professionals make when applying for positions? Dr. Williams, do you want to take that on first?
Yeah, just yesterday we had that search committee meeting where we were looking at a lot of applications. Mike mentioned it, but really making sure that you have a really clean application, because if there are a lot of applicants, typos and bad grammar can be the difference between making that Zoom interview for the first cut or not. I also think that you want to make sure ideally, right, apply for jobs that really are what you love and what you want to do. And that was something that was mentioned in the comments. Like if you are a researcher at heart, then don't apply for an 80% teaching position and vice versa. And so then along those lines, you want to really look at what the position description is and make sure that you address all the aspects of the position that they're looking for, and tailor your comments about your own background so that you can pull out highlights of your own experiences that are going to resonate with the search committee with regard to being able to have met, and generated some experience that are going to meet those key functions of the role. So, a position that is going to focus on, say, teaching greenhouse or floriculture crops, to be able to demonstrate that you've maybe taken a course about teaching in college, or that you've done internships in greenhouses, or that you have certification in floral design, and that you're really passionate about teaching, and you can talk about your excitement of working with students and introducing them to careers in floriculture are, examples of tailoring and application, and not, but you can't forget about research with any kind of land grant academic position. And so being able to talk about, how you would fit in that institution, and maybe even, some opportunities to work with other faculty who are there, which is where that networking can come in really handy.
One thing that we often see coming into industry teams is, we get a lot of applications from people who have gone to great universities and have worked with fantastic professors, a lot of them in floriculture labs. And that's really important, but it's only so much, right? It's not the entire package. What matters is what you're going to take from your PhD research, for instance, or your postdocs or your masters, and bring to a team of people that you're going to start working with and adding your skill set to. And sometimes we've had people kind of, assume that their networks alone can kind of get them the job that they think that they are coming to interview for, simply because of, research pedigree and things like that. And when we want to have people from, all different backgrounds, all different expertise, all these different pieces. And it's really important that you show the value that you bring beyond just your network is important, but you're going to be hired to add a skill set. We want to know what that is, why you're excited about it, what makes you, so passionate about it, and why we should add you as a member of our team. Because when it comes down to it, that's really what we're looking for. We have a missing piece, or we need to add something, and we're looking for you to bring that into the organization. Some people tend to forget that part.
Awesome. So it looks like we have a question here in the Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and read it out. How can you know if the salary offered is competitive compared to the same roles in the industry, especially for specific or higher level positions? Can you negotiate salary after accepting the offer? How will you approach it?
On the academic side, actually, for public institutions, you can literally Google people's salaries.
Yes.
So yeah, you can look it up and know.
And you should. You absolutely should when you can. For industry, there are a lot of really good websites. Glassdoor's a pretty good one. A lot of it really depends on cost of living. You have to consider that. A job in the middle of the United States is, and not a metro area, is probably going to be lower because the cost of living is lower than maybe something in California on the coast. And your actual takeaway, your actual money that you make towards providing a life that you want to live may look very different. So you need to factor that in as well. In terms of negotiating after you have an offer, it's really important to go in with that information. It's powerful to be able to say, I know I've looked this up. I know I have references, or I have experience, use your networks. But also be really, really confident in the things that you're not willing to back down on. Maybe it's not salary, maybe it's vacation. maybe maybe that's what's important to you. Maybe you're willing to not budge on, not have a change in your salary, but have another couple of days of time off because that's what's valuable to you. And that differs to each person. But it's really important that you do that work up front so that when you are handed an offer, you know what the things are that you're gonna push for, and what are the things are that you're willing to compromise on. And it just really takes sitting down and being familiar with what is generally in an offer package, both for academia and for industry roles.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and answer or ask a question here from Erin in the chat. She says, thank you for the presentation. How long before graduation would you suggest seriously searching for positions in the industry? How does this differ from academia positions?
For academia, usually it's not uncommon to start searching when you're within a semester of graduating, because the timeline is so long between interviewing and getting the offer and everything set, and then starting oftentimes at the beginning of a summer or semester schedule. So I'll also say, though, there are lots of applicants who have postdoctoral experience, and in that instance, then you're basically, ready to apply at any point after you've, kind of been in a postdoctoral role for a year or so, and can, benefit from that time investment with publications and having some research output. So pre-graduation with a PhD, I would say within the last semester, it's very appropriate to start looking.
That was I was in academia prior to coming to my industry position. That was the role I did. I did postdocs after my PhD, and I started working, on those applications and fellowship applications and things like that about 9 months before I knew I was going to defend, just because I knew I had a lot of upfront time that I needed to put into making sure things were put in on time, and interviewing, and then the moving process and all of that. In industry, if we are looking for someone that is coming straight out of grad school, it's really helpful to know when your defense is. That is one of the biggest things that we ask if you are interviewing and you haven't defended yet, is when is your defense date? If you can't tell us, then it's not scheduled yet, which is not it's not a stop. It's not, if you're a fantastic candidate for a role, that's not to say that you won't continue to be considered, but it does mean that there's some, risk, and we don't really know what the timeline is that you can join us, and that makes it harder in terms of planning and decision making. So once you know when your defense is, that's probably the very earliest that would be, or at least even a month. Maybe 1 or 2 months that you think you can get all your committee members into the same room, that's when you should start looking. But even before then, that's when you should be networking at conferences, that you should already be tapping your connections in industry. I mean, by that point, if you really want to work in industry, you will have already been talking to people in industry about what roles are available and what you're interested in. So that's not just fresh and you're, completely starting from scratch, ideally.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and add a little bit of my 2 cents here too. I come from a little bit of a different background. I work as a grower, and I've interned for 3 different places before I graduated. And I know one of our speakers mentioned how important internships are for experience, but I think they're also important for you to both interview the company that you might want to work with, and for them to interview you back. You can really understand if it's a good cultural fit. And so I think anytime you have an opportunity to either intern or work in a lab or anything similar to that, I definitely would take it, not just for the learning opportunities, but to basically find a job after you graduate. Let's see, do we have any other questions here in the chat? I think we're all set. So I'm going to go ahead and ask another question here. So in both surveys, we saw that roles in floriculture and horticulture can often be diverse with multiple focuses. And one of the things that I was curious about is how you can best prepare for a role where you'll be wearing multiple hats, and if you have any advice for balancing those multitudes of roles that you might have.
Something I struggle with every day.
Same.
Yeah, gosh, there's always the imminent fires that you have to put out. And so I think maybe some of the art comes into play when you figure out how to do the stuff that it's not like urgent, but really needs to get done to be successful in the longer term. Some of the planning and the, if you're teaching, then you have those day in and day out, lecture and grading and things like that. But it's the research really that's going to be a key part of, career advancement. And, you can flip it too. So a lot of times, writing, fitting in writing, that's a lot of times something that can, be pushed down the road. So yeah, I think it's a struggle that we all certainly face. And I think for those folks who figure out a nice balance for them, they really, really do well. But what I also find is that, you have to be true to yourself, and we tend to do what we love, and, we do what our passion is. And that's why it's so important to match, the kind of work that you look for with it being a good fit for who you are and what your passion is.
Yeah, kind of bouncing off of that. For some people, having a job that requires multiple hats is not a good fit. And sometimes starting a job that's like that is a way that one finds that out. So there are people who find a lot of comfort and satisfaction in coming in, and most days are very similar, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to know that about yourself. I probably am on the total opposite of the spectrum in there. I work in operations, which is a little bit of a lot of different things, but I love that. I've always kind of been that way. I was the grad student who had like 8 projects going on at one time and tons of appendices in my dissertation. And, I was always kind of wanting to do a lot of different things. And finding a role that feeds that has been incredibly rewarding. But balancing it can be challenging, and for me, a lot of it has always been dependent on who the team is I'm working with, but also my direct supervisor. That's actually in terms of interviewing for a role. I spend a lot of time trying to, in terms of who my boss is going to be, because that matters a lot about how you balance things that, if you have too many things on your plate, you're making sure that priorities are what they should be. I always implement something called the top 3. There's always 3 big things going at one time, and everything else has got to be less than that. And if the big 3 needs to change, we'll talk about it. Otherwise, I feel like I've got a kind of a green light to do what I need to do. But it's taken a lot of time to get to that point where you really have to be able to advocate for yourself too. That often people coming into positions, into industry, into academia are the ones that get asked the most to take on committees and fundraisers and every side thing under the planet. And you do have to learn to advocate for yourself and say, here are the things that are the most important to me to meet my personal goals, my company's goals, my research goals, and you have to be able to prioritize that. And until you learn that, it can be a really big struggle.
I think that was an excellent comment, trying to make sure that your company understands what you're looking for, and that you guys have the same vision and everything in mind as well. I think that's awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and pick another question here. So I know there was some talk about networking opportunities and conferences. Is there anything in specific that you guys could recommend for young professionals looking to meet more people in the industry, and find ways to basically find careers from those network opportunities?
Join the YPC, obviously, is one of them. Yeah, networking is not an easy thing for a lot of people, right? Not everyone is the person that can walk into a massive conference and just start saying hi and shaking hands to every person that they want to meet, right? Especially when you're either an undergrad or, just starting out. I don't know, Kimberly, from your perspective, what has worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, giving presentations at conferences really is a nice way to, to meet a lot of people who are interested in the research that you're doing. I'm thinking too about young professionals who serve on, say, scholarship selection committees and so forth. And I know we have a lot of YPC members who have volunteered in those roles, and that starts making some connections with smaller groups that can be really valuable. But attending, Cultivate and, putting ourselves out there and going around and visiting with folks in industry who we have some overlap with, or, in the case of academia, some teaching or research, especially research potential overlap with, can be a great way to make some connections.
Yeah, trying to look for collaborations. I think, how academia and industry can work together, especially if, when you're looking to go into like a graduate lab or something like that, it's great if you want to go into industry, if you have a PI who has very deep connections in the industry, so that things like Cultivate are not nearly as daunting as they might be otherwise, because you can always connect people. But yeah, making sure that the opportunities for especially research, which of course is different than other kind of areas of the floriculture industry, there's always that avenue for how can we work together. It doesn't really matter if you're academia or industry, we're all kind of dealing with the same problems, whether you are a grower or a producer or a breeder, product developer. So how do we work together to make that happen? And I think we're seeing more of that now in the floriculture industry than we have in the past.
Yeah, I'm thinking too, American Heart has like lightning rounds where you can give, short snippets of some of your work and so forth. So that's a great way to make connections with industry and academia as well. Yeah.
And grower meetings, grower conferences. There are lots of grower organizations that if you can get an opportunity to come speak and present your research, especially as like a grad student or even an undergrad, so you start making those connections. The earlier, the better. Even if it's just to absorb knowledge and just get an understanding of what the needs are outside of just the lab, for instance, that's really powerful.
Awesome, fantastic. I think one of the great things too about the floriculture, horticulture industry is like the existence of extension and how much cross there is between breeders and researchers and gardeners and farmers and everything in between. And like you said, it's really important to build those connections. And what's nice is a lot of them are fluid, where they'll go from one to the other. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask one more question here. So just to wrap it up, besides everything we talked about today, is there any other advice you guys might offer to anyone contemplating a job in the horticulture and floriculture industry? And yeah, we'll end it right there.
Nothing pops into my mind, I'll say. I feel like we've really hit some highlights. I did note that the survey results, about 2/3 on the industry side were from our floral industry side. And I know that the group that was surveyed was the American Floral Endowment's, base. So I'm kind of curious of our YPC folks out there. For those of you who are on the retail floral side, is anybody want to throw out some experiences or questions related to that side of things? Or have Megan and I and Mike kind of covered it with our maybe more research and academic and grower focused mentalities?
I can't imagine that we have. I think, yeah, there's so much on the retail florists and all of these different business things that I think we could probably do an entire talk just on that, I'm sure.
And so I think that's an interesting thing, that we might have a different group in YPC versus the, some of the results that we saw in terms of that group of 104. Yeah. So, but there's a lot of overlap, of course, a lot of consistency in the messaging about, be who you are, be passionate. Networking is really important. All those professionalism things, the soft skills piece. I mean, we saw that across all the surveys. Being able to communicate well is going to take you far, regardless of the specifics of your career path. So,
I think what I, especially in the survey results, because of the retail, background, I think one thing that really called out to me was someone said, you have to remember this is a business that we happen to also get to be creative on the industry side. And not to say that the creative side and the passion, the design, the art form of floral work is not critical to what we do, but having that business piece is really important. And it does not matter at what part of, if you're in product development and R&D, retail, florists, everything in that industry, it's a business, and we're here to support customers and provide them, exciting products that happen to be also beautiful and bring a lot of happiness and, all of that. But keeping that in mind always is, really important on the industry side of things. Not to drown out all the fun, awesome creativity, science, what have you, that we get to do, but ensuring that that's what's driving, a lot of, all across the floriculture industry. So
we do
let's
actually have
see.
a question here in the question and answer, and I think it's perfectly timed for what you just were talking about. I'm going to pull it up, make sure I got it correct here. So how important is taking business classes as an undergraduate or graduate for employment in industry and academia?
It's really important. When we get feedback from industry about what they're looking for in graduates, having a strong business background and understanding is high on their list of expectations. So, it's also, I think sometimes I feel pushback from some of our undergraduates about those requirements, because they're like, well, why do I need to take an accounting class? And, the point is that you can have then an intelligent conversation with the folks who are doing accounting for your business if you have just a baseline understanding of, for example, how that works. So it's not like you're becoming an expert in any of these business areas by taking one class here and one class there. It's that you just have some idea kind of how that works. So it's really hard to overemphasize the value of business background and understanding. And I think that was reflected really clearly in the survey results that Mike shared.
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who's seriously considering an MBA at some point, to go back and kind of get that knowledge, as someone who was straight science for a long time, it can be really important, but at least in industry, it depends on what your goals are. If you're someone who is comfortable being in the lab, and that's really where you want to be, is, you may not need to have it. It will definitely make you feel, I know the more that I learn and the more that I do, the more I feel as part of the industry and the company as I kind of gain all this. But to have that as an undergrad or even an early grad student would have been great. So you wouldn't be paying for classes down the line, but also playing catch up, as is your colleagues who've already kind of had that base understanding of even just some of the terminology, is really great to have. But again, it really depends on where you might get into industry, for instance, and kind of what the surveys show. You might come in one role and then just find that you find something else really interesting, that maybe having a business background is going to be really important. And hopefully you work somewhere that is comfortable with that and lets you kind of shift and move. So, but yeah, in terms of hiring someone, that's fantastic when they have even a PhD, grad student, what have you. If they've had some business background, then at least that they have a solid understanding of coming into a company, that is there, we're making money in the industry, right? And having business also just sets you up for life too. Gosh, if I'd taken an accounting class when I was an undergrad, I'm sure I would have been, that would have only helped. So yeah, there's so much power in doing it as early as you can.
All right, I think that was a good last question. If you want to go ahead and wrap us up, Megan, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We'll be sharing executive summaries and the recording of this webinar with attendees in the next few days. Please take a look at the endowment's additional resources for young professionals at endowment.org/YPC. If you sign up to become a member, you'll be informed of all the additional upcoming webinars and events. Karen's going to put the link again in the chat, and also the career resources and industry job opportunities at our Career Center. Especially if you're interested in jobs in floriculture explicitly, that is a great place to check out, because it's really, bringing in lots and lots of job applications from the types of companies that you want to work for that are some of the biggest names in our industry. And Karen will link that again in the chat. So thanks everyone again, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.